10 years is a long time to be away from the people who share your blood, your history, your scars. It's enough time to reinvent yourself, to bury the past under layers of new memories. To convince yourself that the family you left behind was just a chapter you'd closed for good. But blood has a way of pulling you back, like a riptide you didn't see coming. And that's exactly what happened to me, Hannah Carter, on a crisp September afternoon in 2025, as I stood on the front porch of my childhood home in Willow Creek. A suitcase in one hand and a bottle of Merlot in the other, my heart pounding like I was about to walk into a lion's den. I'm 30 years old now. A freelance photographer who spent the last decade chasing sunsets and cityscapes across Europe, Asia, anywhere that wasn't here. I'd built a life of freedom, of solitude, of pictures that told stories I didn't have to live. But when Mom called 3 months ago, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and guilt, begging me to come home for a family reunion, I couldn't say no, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't bear the thought of her crying alone in that big, empty house. The Carter house hadn't changed much in a decade. A 2-story colonial with peeling white paint, a sagging porch swing, and a garden that had once been Mom's pride, but was now a tangle of weeds and forgotten roses. I could still hear the echoes of my childhood here, the sound of Dad's laughter as he pushed me on that swing, the clatter of Bella's bike as she raced me down the driveway. The warmth of family dinners where we'd pass the mashed potatoes and trade stories until the candles burned low. But Dad was gone now, taken by a heart attack 5 years ago. And Bella, my older sister, my best friend turned worst enemy, was a stranger I hadn't spoken to since the day I left. I'd fled Willow Creek at 20. After a betrayal so raw it still stung like a fresh cut, and I'd sworn I'd never come back. Yet here I was, the prodigal daughter, ready to play nice for Mom's sake. To pretend the last 10 years hadn't carved a canyon between us all. I'd organized this reunion with the precision of a military campaign, hoping to rebuild bridges, to find some semblance of the family we'd lost. But as I raised my hand to knock, I had no idea I was about to walk into a minefield, and the first explosion was already ticking. The door flew open before my knuckles could touch the wood, and there was Mom, Evelyn Carter, 58 years old but looking a decade older, her once vibrant auburn hair now streaked with gray, her green eyes bright with a mix of joy and nervousness. She wore a faded floral apron over a sweater that hung loose on her frame, a reminder of the weight she'd lost since Dad's death. "Hannah," she cried, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender and cinnamon, her arms trembling as she squeezed me tight. "Oh, my baby girl, you're really here." Her voice cracked, and I felt a lump rise in my throat, the kind that comes from years of unspoken apologies and missed moments. I hugged her back, the Merlot bottle pressing awkwardly into her side, and for a moment, I let myself believe this could work, that we could be a family again. "Mom, I missed you," I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder, and I meant it. I'd missed her warmth, her laugh, the way she always knew how to make a bad day better with a batch of her famous oatmeal cookies. But as I pulled back, my eyes caught a flicker of movement over her shoulder, and my stomach dropped like I'd just stepped off a cliff. Standing in the foyer, framed by the soft glow of the chandelier, was Bella, my sister, 34 years old. Her chestnut hair cascading in perfect waves, her designer jeans and silk blouse screaming money and confidence. She looked like a polished version of the girl I'd grown up with, the one who'd once shared my secrets and my dreams. But the man standing beside her, his arm draped casually around her waist, was the real gut punch, Ryan Ellis, 35, my high school sweetheart. The boy I'd loved with every fiber of my teenage heart until he shattered it into a million pieces. And now he was Bella's husband. I froze, the Merlot slipping from my hand, the bottle hitting the hardwood with a dull thud, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Mom gasped, stepping back, her hands fluttering to her mouth. "Oh, Hannah, the wine," she exclaimed, but I barely heard her, my eyes locked on Ryan, on the way his broad shoulders filled out his tailored blazer, on the familiar dimple in his cheek as he smiled, a smile that used to be mine. Bella's gaze met mine, her hazel eyes glinting with something I couldn't read, defiance, maybe, or guilt, or a twisted kind of triumph. "Hannah," she said, her voice smooth as honey, but with an edge that could cut glass. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd show." Ryan shifted, his hand tightening on Bella's waist, and he gave me a nod, his voice low and cautious. "Hey, Hannah, it's been a while." "A while?" 10 years. To be exact, 10 years since I'd walked in on him and Bella kissing at my 20th birthday party. 10 years since I'd packed a bag and left Willow Creek without looking back. 10 years since I'd sworn I'd never forgive either of them. And now, here they were, a picture-perfect couple, standing in my childhood home like they belonged. Like they hadn't burned my world to ash. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "What are they doing here?" I turned to her, searching her face for an explanation, for some sign that this was a mistake, a cruel joke. But Mom's expression crumpled, her eyes darting between me and Bella, her hands wringing the hem of her apron. I invited them, sweetheart," she stammered, her voice small, pleading. I thought it was time we all came together as a family. Bella and Ryan live just a few towns over, and I wanted everyone here for the reunion. I didn't think. You didn't think? I cut her off, my voice rising, sharp and raw. The anger I'd buried for a decade clawing its way to the surface. You didn't think I'd care that the man who broke my heart, and the sister who helped him do it, are standing in my house, acting like nothing happened. The words spilled out, each one a shard of glass, and I saw Bella flinch, her perfect facade cracking just a fraction. Ryan stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace, but his voice was tinged with a defensiveness that made my blood boil. "Hannah, come on," he said, his tone infuriatingly calm. "That was a lifetime ago. We've all moved on. Can't we just be civil?" Civil? I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound that made Mom wince. "You think I can be civil when I walked in on you two making out at my own birthday party? When I had to leave my entire life behind because I couldn't stand to see your faces?" I turned to Bella, my eyes burning into hers, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And you, Bella, you were my sister, my best friend. How could you do that to me?" The room was silent, the air thick with tension, the weight of 10 years of unspoken pain pressing down on us all. Bella's lips parted, but no words came, her eyes flickering with something that might have been shame if I didn't know her better. Mom stepped between us, her hands outstretched, her voice trembling with desperation. "Please, girls," she begged, tears welling in her eyes. "I just wanted us to be a family again. I thought if you saw each other, if you talked, maybe you could heal. I didn't mean to hurt you, Hannah." Her words were a knife to the heart, because I knew she meant them, knew she'd spent the last decade grieving Dad, grieving the family we'd lost, clinging to the hope that we could be whole again. But she didn't understand, she couldn't understand, the depth of the betrayal, the way it had hollowed me out, left me a shell of the girl I'd been. Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and in walked Aunt Marjorie, Mom's older sister, 62, a whirlwind of leopard print and perfume, her arms laden with a tray of her infamous deviled eggs. "Evelyn, I'm here," she called, her voice booming, then stopped short, her eyes darting between us, sensing the storm brewing. "Oh my," she said, setting the tray on the hall table, her gaze narrowing on Bella and Ryan. "What's this? The lovebirds are here? And Hannah, too? Well, this is going to be interesting." Her tone was gleeful, the kind of glee that comes from knowing you're about to witness a train wreck. And I felt a surge of dread as more family members began to arrive. Uncle Ted with his new girlfriend, Cousin Ellie with her toddler in tow, all of them piling into the foyer, their chatter a rising tide that threatened to drown me. Bella finally spoke, her voice cool, controlled, but with an undercurrent of venom. "Hannah, if you're going to be dramatic, maybe you shouldn't have come," she said, crossing her arms, her wedding ring, a glittering band I didn't recognize, catching the light. "This is Mom's house, not yours. We're all here for her." The words were a slap, a reminder of the power she'd always held over me, the way she could twist any situation to make me the villain. Ryan nodded, his expression a mix of pity and impatience. And I felt the room spin, the walls closing in as the family's eyes turned to me, waiting for my next move. I took a step back, my suitcase still in hand, my chest tight with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "You're right, Bella," I said, my voice shaking but steady, my eyes locked on hers. "Maybe I shouldn't have come, but I'm here now. And I'm not leaving until we settle this, once and for all." I turned to Mom, my heart breaking at the tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't stop, not now. "You wanted a reunion, Mom? Fine. But don't expect me to play happy families with the people who ruined my life." I dropped my suitcase, the thud echoing in the stunned silence, and stormed into the living room. The family parting like the Red Sea, their whispers following me like a swarm of wasps. This reunion was already a disaster, and it had only just begun. Stick around, because the Carter family is about to implode in ways you won't believe. The living room of the Carter house was a time capsule of my childhood, a museum of memories I'd spent a decade trying to outrun. The faded floral sofa where Bella and I used to braid each other's hair, the oak coffee table where Dad taught us to play chess. The framed photos on the mantel, smiling faces frozen in a happier time, before betrayal and distance turned us into strangers. But as I stormed in, my heart pounding with a cocktail of rage and heartbreak, that nostalgia felt like a cruel joke, a backdrop for the disaster unfolding in real time. I could hear the family trailing behind me, their whispers a rising tide of gossip, Aunt Marjorie's voice cutting through with a gleeful, "Oh, this is better than my soaps." I wanted to scream, to tell them all to leave, to let me grieve the family I'd lost in peace. But I'd promised Mom a reunion, and I wasn't about to let Bella and Ryan drive me out. Not yet. I dropped onto the sofa, the cushion sagging under my weight, and crossed my arms, my eyes burning as I stared at the doorway. Bella and Ryan entered first, her hand in his, a united front that made my stomach churn. Bella's face was a mask of cool composure, but I knew her well enough to see the flicker of unease in her hazel eyes, the way her lips tightened when she glanced at me. Ryan, on the other hand, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, his broad shoulders tense, his jaw set in a way that reminded me of the boy I'd loved, the boy who'd promised me forever before breaking my heart with my own sister. Mom followed, her hands still wringing her apron, her face pale and tear-streaked, a silent plea in her eyes for us to stop fighting. Behind her came the rest of the family, Aunt Marjorie, Uncle Ted with his new girlfriend, a peroxide blonde named Candy who looked barely older than me, and Cousin Ellie, her toddler tugging at her skirt, oblivious to the storm brewing. "Hannah," Mom said, her voice trembling as she hovered near the armchair, "please, let's just sit down and talk. We can work this out." She gestured to the room, as if a circle of folding chairs and a tray of deviled eggs could fix a decade of betrayal. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made Ellie's toddler look up, his eyes wide. "Talk," I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. "What's there to talk about, Mom? How Bella stole my boyfriend and married him. How you invited them here without even warning me. Or how I'm supposed to sit here and pretend I'm okay with it." My words were a whip, each one cracking through the air, and I saw Mom flinch, her hands clutching the back of the armchair for support. Bella stepped forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood, her posture all sharp angles and defiance. "You're being ridiculous, Hannah," she said, her voice cold, cutting, the kind of tone she'd always used to put me in my place when we were kids. "This isn't about you. It's about Mom, about giving her the family day she's been dreaming of. If you can't handle seeing me and Ryan, maybe you should leave." Her words were a dagger, aimed straight at my heart, and I felt the old wound tear open, the pain as fresh as it had been 10 years ago. I stood, my hands clenched into fists, my voice rising to match hers. "Leave? This is my home, Bella, not yours. You don't get to waltz in here with him and act like I'm the problem. You broke us. You broke me, and you don't even have the decency to apologize." Ryan moved to Bella's side, his hand on her arm, his voice low but firm. "Hannah, enough," he said, his blue eyes meeting mine, a mix of frustration and something softer, something that might have been regret if I believed he was capable of it. "We didn't come here to fight. We came for Evelyn. Can't you see how much this is hurting her?" He gestured to Mom, who was now openly crying, her shoulders shaking as she sank into the armchair, her hands covering her face. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and searing, but it was drowned out by the fury boiling in my chest. "Hurting her?" I snapped, turning on him, my voice a snarl. "You don't get to lecture me about hurting people, Ryan. You lost that right when you kissed my sister behind my back. You don't get to play the good guy now." The room erupted, the family's voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of opinions and accusations. Aunt Marjorie clapped her hands, her eyes gleaming with delight. "Oh, I knew this would be a show. Keep going, girls." Uncle Ted, ever the peacemaker, tried to intervene, his voice booming over the din. Now, let's all calm down. Candy, grab the whiskey from my bag, will you?" Candy, who'd been scrolling on her phone, looked up with a vacant smile, clearly out of her depth, and rummaged through Ted's duffel, pulling out a bottle of Jack Daniels that made Ellie roll her eyes. "Really, Uncle Ted?" Ellie said, scooping up her toddler, who was now trying to climb the coffee table. "Booze isn't going to fix this." But the real chaos came when Bella's composure finally cracked, her voice rising to a shout that silenced the room. "You want an apology, Hannah?" she yelled, her face flushing red, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "Fine. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I fell in love with Ryan. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. But you were always so perfect, so good, the golden child who could do no wrong. I was tired of living in your shadow, tired of being the screw-up sister. So yes, I kissed him, and I'd do it again, because he chose me." Her words hung in the air, a confession and a challenge, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. The betrayal cutting deeper than I'd thought possible. I opened my mouth to fire back, but before I could, Ryan stepped in, his voice sharp, his patience clearly at its limit. "Bella, stop," he said, his hand gripping her arm, his eyes darting between us. "This isn't helping." He turned to me, his expression a mix of exasperation and guilt. "Hannah, I'm sorry too, okay? I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. But we're married now, and we have a life together. You need to let this go." "Let it go?" The words were a match to the gasoline of my anger, and I felt the flames roar to life inside me. "Let it go," I said, my voice trembling with rage, my hands shaking as I pointed at them. "You don't get to tell me to let it go, Ryan. You don't get to stand there with my sister and act like what you did was some minor inconvenience. You destroyed me." Mom stood, her tears streaming, her voice a desperate wail that cut through the shouting. "Please, stop," she cried, her hands outstretched, her body trembling. "I can't take this. I just wanted my girls back, my family back. Why can't you see that?" Her words were a knife to the heart, and for a moment, I faltered, the guilt crashing over me like a wave. But before I could respond, the doorbell rang, a sharp, jarring sound that made us all freeze, our heads turning toward the foyer. "I'll get it," Ellie said, her voice tight, clearly eager for an escape. She set her toddler down, the little boy immediately toddling toward the coffee table again, and hurried to the door. I heard the creak of hinges, the murmur of voices, and then Ellie's sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God," she said, her voice carrying a mix of shock and dread. "Mom, you didn't." I turned, my heart sinking, as Ellie stepped back into the room, followed by a face I hadn't seen in years, Grandma Ruth. Mom's mother, 82 years old, a tiny woman with a steel spine and a tongue sharper than a razor. She leaned on a cane, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes scanning the room with the precision of a hawk spotting prey. "Evelyn," Grandma Ruth said, her voice a low growl, her gaze locking on Mom. "What in God's name is going on here?" I could hear the shouting from the driveway. Mom's face went white, her hands fluttering to her chest, her voice a stammer. "And Mother, I didn't expect you so soon," she said, her eyes darting to me. Then Bella, then back to Grandma Ruth. "I thought you were coming tomorrow." Grandma Ruth snorted, her cane tapping the floor with a sharp thwack. "Clearly, I should have come sooner. This family's a mess, and I'm not even through the door yet." She turned her gaze on me, her eyes narrowing, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Grandma Ruth had always been the family's matriarch. A woman who ruled with an iron fist and a Bible verse, the kind of person who could make you feel like a child with a single look. "Hannah," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What's got you so riled up?" Before I could answer, Bella spoke, her voice dripping with false sweetness, her hand tightening on Ryan's arm. "Oh, Grandma, Hannah's just having a little meltdown," she said, her smile a perfect mask of innocence. "She's upset that Ryan and I are here. Apparently, she can't handle seeing us together." The room fell silent, the family holding its breath, waiting for Grandma Ruth's reaction. Her eyes flicked to Bella, then to Ryan, then back to me. And I saw a spark of recognition in her gaze, a dawning understanding of the history we were all dancing around. "Is that so?" she said, her voice deceptively soft, her cane tapping again, a slow, deliberate rhythm that felt like a countdown to an explosion. "Well, I think it's time we all sat down and had a little chat, don't you? Because if there's one thing I can't stand, it's a family that can't keep its dirty laundry in the hamper." She moved to the armchair, lowering herself with a grace that belied her age, her eyes never leaving mine. The family shuffled in, taking seats on the sofa, the folding chairs, the floor, their faces a mix of dread and anticipation. Mom sat beside Grandma Ruth, her hands clasped in her lap, her tears still falling silently. Bella and Ryan took the love seat, their bodies pressed close, a united front that made my skin crawl. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, my heart pounding as Grandma Ruth leaned forward. Her voice a low, dangerous purr. "Now," she said, her eyes sweeping the room. "Let's start with the truth. Hannah, why don't you tell me exactly what's going on here?" I opened my mouth, the words on the tip of my tongue, but before I could speak, the toddler, Ellie's son, grabbed a deviled egg from Aunt Marjorie's tray and hurled it across the room, the yellow filling splattering across Bella's silk blouse. Bella shrieked, jumping to her feet, her composure shattering as she swiped at the stain, her voice a high-pitched wail. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted, glaring at Ellie, who was already scooping up her son, her face red with embarrassment. "Control your kid, Ellie." The room erupted again, Marjorie laughing hysterically, Ted pouring whiskey into a plastic cup, and Grandma Ruth slamming her cane on the floor, her voice booming. "Enough." I stood there, the chaos swirling around me. My eyes locked on Bella's stained blouse, a small, petty part of me savoring her humiliation. But I knew this was just the beginning, the real storm was coming, and I was ready to unleash it. This reunion was about to get a lot uglier, and I wasn't backing down. Stick around, because the Carter family secrets are about to spill in ways you won't see coming. The Carter living room had become a battlefield, the air thick with the scent of deviled eggs, whiskey, and unspoken grudges. Grandma Ruth sat in the armchair like a queen on her throne, her cane resting against her knee, her sharp eyes pinning me in place as if I were a butterfly on a collector's board. The family was a tableau of dysfunction around her, Bella dabbing at the egg stain on her blouse with a napkin, her face a mask of fury, Ryan beside her, his jaw tight, his hand on her shoulder like a shield, Mom in the corner, her tears silent but steady, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Aunt Marjorie perched on the sofa, a glass of Uncle Ted's whiskey in hand, her eyes gleaming with the delight of a woman who lived for chaos. Uncle Ted and Candy shared a folding chair, Ted sipping straight from the bottle while Candy scrolled TikTok, oblivious to the storm. Ellie wrestled her toddler, who was now smearing egg yolk on the coffee table, her face red with embarrassment. And me, Hannah Carter, standing in the center of it all, my heart a war drum, my voice ready to unleash a decade of pain. Grandma Ruth's question hung in the air like a guillotine blade, her voice a low, dangerous purr that demanded obedience. "Hannah," she repeated, her gaze unyielding. "Tell me exactly what's going on here." I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my hands trembling at my sides. The truth was a grenade, and I was about to pull the pin. I glanced at Bella, her eyes narrowing, a silent warning to keep my mouth shut, but I was done playing her games. I turned back to Grandma Ruth, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "What's going on?" I said, each word a bullet. "Is that Bella stole my boyfriend 10 years ago, married him, and now they're here, acting like I'm the one who should get over it." The room erupted. A cacophony of gasps and murmurs, the family's whispers rising like a swarm of angry bees. Aunt Marjorie let out a low whistle, her glass pausing halfway to her lips. "Well, damn," she said, her voice dripping with glee. "That's a plot twist." Uncle Ted coughed, choking on his whiskey, while Candy looked up from her phone, her eyes wide. "Wait, what?" she said, her voice a squeak. "She stole your man? That's savage." Ellie, still holding her squirming toddler, shot Bella a look of pure disgust, her voice sharp. "Bella, how could you? She's your sister." Bella stood, her napkin falling to the floor, her face a storm of rage and defiance. "That's not the whole story, and you know it, Hannah," she shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and something deeper, something that might have been guilt if I believed she was capable of it. "You always twist everything to make me the villain. Yes, I kissed Ryan, and yes, we got married, but you act like you were some perfect angel. You were so busy being Mom's favorite, Dad's little girl, that you never saw how much I was struggling." Her words hit like a slap, a twisted version of the truth that made my blood boil. I stepped forward, my voice rising to match hers, my hands clenched into fists. "Struggling? You call sneaking around with my boyfriend struggling? You broke my heart, Bella, and you didn't even care." Ryan stood, his hands raised, his voice a desperate plea for calm. Both of you, stop, he said, his eyes darting between us, his face flushed with frustration. This isn't getting us anywhere. Bella, sit down. Hannah, just take a breath. But I was beyond breathing, beyond reason. I turned on him, my voice a snarl, my eyes burning with a decade of pin-up rage. Don't you dare tell me what to do, Ryan, I said, my words venomous, each one a dagger aimed at his heart. You don't get to play mediator after what you did. You chose her, fine, but you don't get to stand here and act like I'm the problem for being hurt. Grandma Ruth slammed her cane on the floor, the sharp thwack silencing the room, her voice a growl that brooked no argument. Enough, she barked, her eyes flashing with a fire that made even Bella flinch. I will not have this family tear itself apart in front of me. Sit down, all of you, and let's get to the bottom of this. She pointed her cane at the sofa, her gaze sweeping the room. And the family obeyed, shuffling to their seats like chastised children. Bella sat, her arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. Ryan sat beside her, his hand on her knee, his eyes avoiding mine. I dropped back onto the sofa, my chest heaving, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Grandma Ruth leaned forward, her voice softening but no less commanding, her eyes locked on Bella. Isabel, she said, using Bella's full name, a sign of how serious this was. Is what Hannah says true? Did you pursue this young man while he was with her? The room held its breath. The tension a physical thing, pressing down on us all. Bella's lips tightened, her eyes flickering with a mix of shame and defiance, but she didn't look away. Yes, she said, her voice low, steady. A confession that felt like a punch to the gut. I did, but it wasn't like Hannah makes it sound. She was always the perfect one, the one everyone loved. I was the screw-up, the one who couldn't get anything right. Ryan, he saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else did. I didn't mean to hurt her, but I wasn't going to let her have everything. The admission hung in the air, a raw, jagged thing that tore at the fragile threads holding our family together. Mom let out a soft sob, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Aunt Marjorie took a long sip of whiskey, her eyebrows raised, her voice a murmur. Well, that's one way to spice up a reunion. Ellie shook her head, her toddler now asleep in her arms. Her voice a whisper. That's awful, Bella. Uncle Ted poured another shot, his voice gruff. Kids these days, he muttered, as if that explained everything. I felt the room spin. Bella's words echoing in my mind, a twisted version of the past that made my skin crawl. You didn't mean to hurt me? I said, my voice trembling, my hands shaking as I stood again. Unable to sit still. You kissed him at my birthday party, Bella. My 20th birthday. I walked in on you too, and you didn't even stop. You just looked at me, like I was nothing, and kept going. Do you have any idea what that did to me? My voice cracked, tears burning at the edges of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of her. Not in front of this room full of witnesses to my humiliation. Bella's face softened, just for a moment, a flicker of something that might have been regret, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold, defensive glare. I was drunk, Hannah, she said, her voice sharp, her hands clenching in her lap. We both were. It wasn't planned, it just happened. And after you left, after you ran off to Europe without a word, Ryan and I, we got closer. We fell in love. I'm not going to apologize for that. Her words were a knife, twisting deeper. And I felt the air leave my lungs, the pain as fresh as it had been 10 years ago. Before I could respond, Grandma Ruth turned to Ryan, her eyes narrowing, her voice a low growl. And you, young man? She said, her cane pointing at him like a weapon. What do you have to say for yourself? Did you love Hannah, or was she just a stepping stone to her sister? The question was a bombshell. And I saw Ryan flinch, his face paling, his hand tightening on Bella's knee. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his eyes darting to me, then to Bella, then back to Grandma Ruth. A man caught in a trap with no way out. I did love Hannah, he said finally, his voice low, hesitant, each word a struggle. I loved her a lot. But things with Bella, they just happened. I didn't mean for it to go that way, but by the time I realized what I felt for Bella, it was too late. I'm sorry, Hannah. I really am. His apology was a hollow thing, a band-aid on a gaping wound. And I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, a sound that made Mom wince. Sorry, I said, my voice dripping with scorn, my eyes burning into his. You're sorry? That's all you've got after 10 years? You broke my heart, Ryan, and you don't even have the guts to own it. I turned to Bella, my voice a snarl, my hands trembling with rage. And you can dress it up however you want, but you knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted to hurt me, to take something from me, because you couldn't stand that I had something you didn't. Well, congratulations, Bella. You won. But don't expect me to clap for you. The room was silent, the tension a living thing, coiling around us like a snake. Grandma Ruth leaned back, her eyes narrowing, her voice a low murmur. Well, she said, her tone deceptively calm, it seems we have a lot to unpack here. But I think there's more to this story than either of you are saying. She turned to Mom, her gaze sharpening, her voice a command. Evelyn, you've been awfully quiet. Did you know about this affair when it happened? Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide, her hands trembling as she clutched her apron. I didn't know at first, she stammered, her voice small, her tears falling faster now. Not until after Hannah left. Bella told me a few months later, after she and Ryan started dating officially. I was devastated, but I thought if I gave them space, if I let them figure it out, maybe things would get better. I didn't want to lose both my girls. Her words were a confession, a plea for forgiveness, but they only fueled my anger. The betrayal cutting deeper than I'd thought possible. You knew? I said, my voice a whisper, my eyes locked on Mom, my heart breaking all over again. You knew what they did. And you still invited them here, without telling me? How could you do that to me, Mom? My voice rose, trembling with a mix of rage and hurt, and I saw Mom crumble, her sobs shaking her frail frame, her hands covering her face. I'm sorry, Hannah, she cried, her voice muffled, her words a broken refrain. I just wanted my family back. I thought you could forgive them. Before I could respond, the lights flickered, a sharp buzz cutting through the air, and the room plunged into darkness, the sudden blackout a jolt that made us all freeze. Ellie's toddler woke with a wail, his cries echoing in the silence, and Aunt Marjorie let out a dramatic gasp, her voice a theatrical whisper. Oh my God, it's a sign. The spirits are angry. Uncle Ted laughed, his voice slurring slightly, the whiskey clearly taking effect. It's just a power outage, Marjorie. Calm down. But as the darkness stretched on, the tension in the room grew. A palpable thing that made my skin crawl. Something was coming, something bigger than a blackout, and I had a feeling it was going to change everything. Stick around. Because the Carter family drama is about to take a turn you won't see coming. The darkness in the Carter living room was a physical thing. A heavy shroud that amplified every sound, the toddler's wails, Mom's soft sobs, Aunt Marjorie's dramatic sighs, the creak of the sofa as Bella shifted beside Ryan. I stood frozen, my heart pounding. The blackout a surreal pause in the storm of our family's unraveling. The air was thick with the scent of whiskey and tension. The shadows cast by the faint moonlight through the window, turning us into ghosts of ourselves. I could feel the family's eyes on me, even in the dark, their judgment a weight I couldn't shake. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. If Bella and Ryan thought a power outage would save them from the truth, they were dead wrong. Ellie, check the breaker, Uncle Ted said, his voice gruff. The whiskey bottle clinking as he set it on the coffee table. Ellie sighed, her toddler still crying in her arms, her voice tight with frustration. I'm a little busy, Uncle Ted, she snapped, bouncing the child on her hip. Maybe you can get off your ass and do it yourself. Ted grumbled, but before he could move, Candy stood, her voice a chirpy contrast to the glow. I'll do it, she said, her phone flashlight cutting through the darkness as she stumbled toward the basement door, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Aunt Marjorie chuckled, her voice a low murmur. That girl's dumber than a bag of hammers, but at least she's useful. Grandma Ruth's cane tapped the floor, a sharp, deliberate sound that cut through the chaos, her voice a low growl. Focus. All of you, she said, her tone a command that made even the toddler's cries quiet. This isn't about the lights. It's about the truth. Evelyn, you've admitted you knew about Bella and Ryan. But there's more, isn't there? Something you're not saying. Her words were a spotlight, illuminating the cracks in Mom's fragile facade, and I saw Mom stiffen, her hands trembling in her lap. Her voice a whisper. Mother, please, she said, her tone pleading, her tears glistening in the moonlight. Not now. But Grandma Ruth was relentless, her voice a blade, cutting through Mom's defenses. Now is exactly the time, Evelyn, she said, her cane tapping again, a slow, menacing rhythm. If this family is going to heal, we need the whole story. What else do you know? The room held its breath, the tension a living thing, coiling tighter with every second. I turned to Mom, my heart pounding, a mix of dread and anticipation churning in my gut. I'd always known there was more to Bella and Ryan's betrayal, something I'd never been able to piece together. And now, with Grandma Ruth's unyielding gaze on her, Mom looked like a cornered animal, ready to bolt. I didn't just know after the fact, Mom said finally, her voice barely audible, her hands clutching her apron so tightly I thought it might tear. I saw them that night. At Hannah's party. I was in the kitchen, getting more ice, and I saw them through the window, in the backyard. They were kissing. Her words were a bombshell. A revelation that sent a shockwave through the room, and I felt the air leave my lungs, the betrayal cutting deeper than I'd thought possible. You saw them, I said, my voice a whisper. My eyes locked on Mom, my heart breaking all over again. You saw them kissing, and you didn't say anything? You didn't stop them? Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide, her voice a desperate plea. I didn't know what to do, Hannah, she cried, her tears falling faster now, her hands trembling as she reached for me. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought if I confronted them, it would make things worse, that it would tear you girls apart. So I kept quiet. I hoped it was a mistake, a one-time thing, that you'd never find out. Her words were a confession, a betrayal of their own, and I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal thing that threatened to shatter the room. You hoped I'd never find out? I said, my voice rising, trembling with a mix of rage and hurt, my hands shaking as I stepped toward her. I walked in on them, Mom. I saw them with my own eyes, and it broke me. And you knew, the whole time. And you didn't say a word? You let me think I was crazy, that I was overreacting, when you knew the truth. My voice cracked, tears streaming down my face now, the pain a living thing, clawing at my heart. Mom sobbed, her hands covering her face, her voice a broken refrain. I'm sorry, Hannah, she cried, her words muffled, her body shaking. I thought I was protecting you. Bella stood, her face a storm of rage and guilt, her voice a shout that cut through Mom's sobs. Don't blame her, Hannah, she yelled, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes burning into mine. This isn't Mom's fault. It's mine. I made a choice, and I'd make it again, because I love Ryan, and he loves me. You need to stop acting like a victim and move on. Her words were a slap, a challenge. And I felt the flames of my anger roar to life, the pain fueling my fury. Move on, I shouted, stepping toward her, my voice a snarl, my hands trembling with rage. You don't get to tell me to move on, Bella. You stole my life, my happiness, and you don't even care. Ryan stood, his hands raised, his voice a desperate plea. Hannah, Bella, stop, he shouted, his eyes darting between us, his face flushed with frustration. This isn't helping anyone. We need to. But before he could finish, the lights flickered back on, a harsh glare that made us all blink. The sudden brightness a jolt that silenced the room. Candy stood in the doorway, her phone flashlight still on, her voice a chirpy triumph. I did it, she said, her smile wide. Clearly oblivious to the chaos she'd walked back into. The breaker just needed a flip. But the light didn't just illuminate the room. It illuminated something else. Something I hadn't noticed in the darkness. On Bella's finger, glinting under the chandelier, was a ring, a familiar ring, a simple gold band with a small sapphire. The ring Ryan had given me on our one-year anniversary, the ring I'd thrown at him the night I caught him with Bella. My breath caught, my eyes locked on the ring, the sight of it a punch to the gut. A betrayal so raw it stole the air from my lungs. That's my ring, I said, my voice a whisper, my hands trembling as I pointed at Bella's hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. That's the ring I gave Ryan. You're wearing my ring. The room fell silent, the family's eyes darting to Bella's hand, the tension a palpable thing, pressing down on us all. Bella's face paled, her hand jerking back, her voice a stammer. I didn't, she said, her eyes wide, her composure shattering under the weight of my accusation. Ryan's face went white, his hands dropping to his sides. His voice a whisper. Hannah, I can explain, he said, his eyes pleading, but I was beyond listening, beyond reason. Explain, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage, my tears falling freely now. You gave her my ring, Ryan? The ring I gave you? The ring that meant everything to me? How could you?" The family erupted, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of shock and outrage. Aunt Marjorie let out a dramatic gasp, her whiskey glass clattering to the floor, her voice a theatrical wail. "Oh my God, he gave her the ring? That's cold." Ellie stood, her toddler in her arms, her voice sharp with disgust. "That's low, Ryan, even for you." Uncle Ted shook his head, his voice gruff, the whiskey bottle forgotten in his hand. "What a mess," he muttered, as Candy looked on, her eyes wide, her voice a squeak. "Wait, so he recycled the ring? That's, so tacky." Grandma Ruth slammed her cane on the floor, her voice a roar that silenced the room, her eyes flashing with a fury I'd never seen. "Silence," she bellowed, her gaze sweeping the room, her cane pointing at Bella and Ryan like a weapon. "Is this true? Did you give her Hannah's ring?" "Young man." Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it, his face a mask of guilt, his eyes avoiding mine. Bella's hand trembled, her voice a whisper, her eyes darting to Ryan, then to me, then back to Grandma Ruth. I didn't know," she said, her voice small, her composure gone, her hand clutching the ring as if it might burn her. "He told me it was new, that he bought it for me." The lie hung in the air, a fragile thing, and I saw the truth in Ryan's eyes, the guilt he couldn't hide. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal thing that threatened to shatter the room. But before I could let it out, Grandma Ruth stood, her cane slamming the floor, her voice a command. "Enough," she said, her tone final, her eyes burning into Bella and Ryan. "This ends now. We're going to sit down, and we're going to sort this out, once and for all. But first, I want that ring off your finger, Isabel. It doesn't belong to you." The room held its breath, the tension a living thing, coiling tighter with every second. Something was about to break, and I had a feeling it was going to be us. Stick around, because the Carter family is about to face its reckoning. The Carter living room was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the scent of whiskey, egg yolk, and the bitter tang of betrayal. Grandma Ruth stood at the center of it all, her tiny frame a towering presence, her cane a scepter of authority, her eyes burning with a fury that made even Bella shrink back. The ring on Bella's finger glinted under the chandelier, a small sapphire that held a decade of pain, a symbol of everything I'd lost. The family sat in stunned silence, their eyes darting between me, Bella, and Ryan, the tension a palpable thing, pressing down on us all. Mom's sobs had quieted, but her face was a mask of grief, her hands trembling in her lap. Aunt Marjorie clutched her empty glass, her eyes wide with anticipation, while Uncle Ted and Candy shared a folding chair, Ted's whiskey bottle forgotten in his hand, Candy's phone now recording. Her voice a whisper. "This is going viral," she said, her eyes gleaming. Ellie held her sleeping toddler, her face a mix of shock and disgust, her voice a murmur. "I can't believe this." Grandma Ruth's voice cut through the silence, her tone a command that brooked no argument. "Isabel," she said, her cane pointing at Bella, her eyes unyielding, "take that ring off. Now." Bella's hand trembled, her face pale, her eyes darting to Ryan, then to me, then back to Grandma Ruth, a trapped animal with nowhere to run. "Grandma, she stammered, her voice small. Her composure shattered under the weight of the moment. I didn't know it was hers. Ryan told me, but Grandma Ruth cut her off, her cane slamming the floor, the sharp thwack a gunshot in the silence. "I don't want excuses," she said, her voice a growl, her eyes flashing. "Take it off, or I'll take it off for you." Bella's hands shook as she slipped the ring from her finger, the gold band catching the light as she held it out, her eyes avoiding mine, her voice a whisper. "Here," she said, her hand trembling as she placed it on the coffee table. The small sapphire a glittering accusation in the center of the room. I stared at it, my heart pounding, a mix of rage and grief churning in my gut. That ring had been a promise, a symbol of the love I'd thought would last forever, and now it was a weapon, a reminder of everything I'd lost. Grandma Ruth turned to Ryan, her cane pointing at him now, her voice a low growl. "And you," she said, her eyes narrowing, her tone a blade. "Explain yourself. Did you give her Hannah's ring, knowing what it meant to her?" Ryan's face was a mask of guilt. His hands clenched at his sides, his eyes darting to Bella, then to me, then to the floor, a man caught in a trap of his own making. I didn't think it would matter," he said finally, his voice low, hesitant, each word a struggle. "I kept the ring after Hannah left, and when Bella and I got engaged, I didn't have the money for a new one. I thought it was just a ring. I didn't think she'd ever know. The admission was a punch to the gut, a betrayal so raw it stole the air from my lungs. Just a ring, I said, my voice trembling. My hands shaking as I stepped toward him, my tears falling freely now. That was my ring, Ryan, the ring I gave you, the ring that meant everything to me. And you gave it to her, like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. My voice cracked, the pain a living thing, clawing at my heart, and I saw Ryan flinch, his face paling, his eyes filled with a guilt he couldn't hide. Bella stood, her face a storm of rage and shame, her voice a shout that cut through the silence. I didn't know Hannah, she yelled, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes burning into mine. He told me it was new, that he bought it for me. I didn't know it was yours. Her words were a plea, a desperate attempt to shift the blame, but I was beyond listening, beyond reason. You didn't know? I shouted, stepping toward her, my voice a snarl, my hands trembling with rage. You didn't know because you didn't care, Bella. You took everything from me, my boyfriend, my happiness, my family, and you didn't even stop to think about what it would do to me. Mom stood, her tears streaming, her voice a desperate wail that cut through the shouting. Please, stop. She cried, her hands outstretched, her body trembling. I can't take this anymore. I just wanted my girls back, my family back. Why can't you see that? Her words were a knife to the heart. And for a moment, I faltered, the guilt crashing over me like a wave. But I was too far gone, the pain too raw, the betrayal too deep. I turned to Mom, my voice a whisper, my eyes burning with tears. I'm sorry, Mom, I said, my voice trembling, my heart breaking. But I can't do this. I can't be here, not with them. I turned to leave, my suitcase still in the foyer, my heart a smoldering ruin. But before I could take a step, Grandma Ruth's voice stopped me, her tone a command that rooted me to the spot. Hannah, wait, she said, her voice softer now, but no less firm. Her cane tapping the floor with a slow, deliberate rhythm. You're not leaving until we finish this. All of you, sit down. We're going to end this, once and for all. Her words were a lifeline, a promise of resolution, and I felt a flicker of hope, a small, fragile thing, amidst the wreckage of my heart. The family sat, their faces a mix of dread and anticipation, the tension a living thing, coiling tighter with every second. I sat on the sofa, my hands clasped in my lap, my tears still falling, my eyes locked on the ring on the coffee table. Grandma Ruth leaned forward, her voice a low murmur, her eyes sweeping the room. This family has been broken for too long, she said, her tone heavy with the weight of years, her gaze settling on Bella and Ryan. And it ends today? Isabel, Ryan, you've both hurt Hannah deeply, and you need to own that. But Hannah, you need to decide. Do you want to keep holding on to this pain, or do you want to let it go? Her words were a challenge, a question I wasn't sure I could answer, and I felt the room hold its breath, waiting for my response. I looked at Bella, at Ryan, at the ring on the table, and I felt the weight of a decade of pain pressing down on me, a burden I wasn't sure I could carry anymore. I don't know if I can let it go, I said finally, my voice trembling, my hands shaking as I wiped my tears. But I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep hating you, Bella, because it's killing me. But I can't forgive you, either, not yet. Bella's face softened, her eyes filling with tears, her voice a whisper. I'm sorry, Hannah, she said, her hands trembling in her lap, her gaze meeting mine for the first time without defiance, without anger. I never meant to hurt you like this. I was selfish, and I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll let me. Her words were a bomb, a small, fragile thing, and I felt a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart, a sliver of light in the darkness. Ryan stood, his face a mask of guilt, his voice low, steady, a promise I wasn't sure I could believe. I'm sorry too, Hannah, he said, his eyes meeting mine, his hands clenched at his sides. I was a coward, and I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I love Bella, and I'm not going to leave her. I hope one day you can find peace. His words were a goodbye, a final severing of the tie that had bound us, and I felt a weight lift, a small, quiet thing, amidst the storm of my emotions. Grandma Ruth nodded, her eyes softening, her voice a murmur. That's a start, she said, her cane tapping the floor, a slow, steady rhythm. But healing takes time, and it takes work. You three need to talk, Really talk, not just shout. And Evelyn, you need to stop hiding from the truth. This family needs to face its demons, together. Her words were a roadmap, a path forward, and I felt a flicker of hope, a small, fragile thing. Amidst the wreckage of our reunion, I stood, my hands trembling, my eyes locked on the ring on the table. I picked it up, the gold band cool against my skin, the sapphire glinting in the light. A symbol of a past I was ready to let go. I turned to Bella, my voice steady, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in years. This isn't mine anymore, I said, placing the ring in her hand. My tears falling freely now. And neither is he. I'm done, Bella. I'm done hating you, but I'm done with you too. I turned to Mom, my voice a whisper, my heart breaking but healing too. I love you, Mom, but I need time. I'll call you, I promise, but I can't stay here. I walked to the foyer, my suitcase waiting by the door, my heart a mix of pain and peace. The family's eyes following me, their whispers a soft hum in the background. I stepped into the crisp September air, the wind cool against my tear-streaked face, and I felt a weight lift, a small, quiet thing, as I walked away from the Carter house, from the past, from the pain. I didn't know if I'd ever come back, but I knew I'd survived, and that was enough. The Carter family reunion was over. But the healing had just begun. Thanks for sticking with me. Drop your thoughts below, and let me know if you do the same.